Hello, I'm Asher.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Verity.
And welcome to episode 7 of the What the Friday podcast.
This is the introduction where we thank people for listening and do a joke about the big issues facing young people, like not getting enough likes or running out of phone data, and introduce a couple of interviews. But we're going to do it a bit differently today, aren't we, Asher?
Yes, during the summer I got together with 3 other young people from the Brunswick Centre and we sat down for a couple of days to make a podcast episode about the lives, issues and challenges faced by LGBTQ young people. I was joined by Iona, Indigo and Finn. We worked with Graham at Youth Social to create this special episode. We hope you enjoy it.
Hello, I'm Iona.
Hi, I'm Indigo.
I'm Finn.
And I'm Asher, and this is our LGBTQ plus podcast Takeover.
Yep, it's a special episode devoted to the teenage journey that many of us experience, from first discovering that we are LGBTQ to coming out, and how to cope with all that whilst being at school or college.
And before you say, oh, this episode isn't for me, we'd urge you to continue listening, as how you interact with someone that is gay could have a massive experience on their life.
Whether you're there for the late night conversations, or maybe you're someone who uses the occasional slur, understanding what it's like to be gay as a teenager is something we think everyone should know about.
But primarily, this episode is for the 8% of 16 to 24-year-olds who identify as LGBTQ or are still working it all out.
We are also joined by regular host Graham, who is going to try and make sure that what we say is useful, succinct, and that we don't go down too many rabbit holes.
Hi, I'm really looking forward to our conversations today and I'm hoping that I learn a lot too.
We're just looking forward to you asking us some really awkward questions.
Okay, so shall I dive in? We met yesterday to plan a bit of a structure for this podcast. I've tried to group our conversations into 4 separate areas. The first stages of discovering that you're gay, coming out and how that impacts your school and college life. Third section looking at maybe the impact of being gay on your mental health and exploring how LGBTQ youth centres can help in this process. If you could give us your experience of those, that might be really useful for people who might be at a similar stage in their lives. And I'm sure that any advice that you can give to help with the process would be massively appreciated.
I'm just glad that we don't have to talk about relationships.
Yes, especially as that would have been a very short conversation.
Well, let's save that for another podcast. Shall we dive straight in? So Wikipedia, that font of all knowledge, describes this as knowing oneself when the realisation emerges that one is open to same-sex relations. This is often described as internal coming out. Does that sound like a phrase you recognise?
Yeah, I think so.
So how old were you when you realised that you were open to same-sex relations? And do you remember if there was a defining moment?
I do remember it as a very defining moment. I was 9 years old and I was an avid reader and I had this book called One of Us is Lying, and I was reading a chapter and I was very, very disappointed because the 2 female characters didn't get together, and it just kind of made me think, why am I so disappointed about this? That's not normal.
There's times when I was about 8 years old, I'd watch movies and I'd be attracted to female characters.
Okay.
So I always knew that there was something, but I didn't necessarily, I just brushed it off.
I feel like ever since I was young, I always understood that there was something different going on. I knew that I was a bit different than all of my siblings. I'm from a very big family, so it was quite evident. But I think the most defining moment was when I was in year 8 and my best friend at the time came out to me and said, yeah, you know what, I like you. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like you too. I don't know if this is something I'm open to. And then I spent a good couple of weeks thinking over everything, trying to understand what was going through my own head.
I was open to same-sex relationships before I even knew what same-sex relationships were, as the social concept and everything being labelled as that. When I was rather young, I did kind of have a bit of a thing with a friend, and then later when I was told about what being gay was, I realised, oh, that sounds like what I used to have with that person. It's just profound moment of realisation.
I think it's definitely to do with, kind of as you get older and you reach puberty, I think you kind of start to develop your own personality a little bit more. You know yourself a little bit better. And I think you also kind of start having more emotional reactions to things and you have more feelings suddenly. And I think that's when you start to realise a bit more.
I was 12, about to turn 13. So it was one of the guys, the first guy, trans guy, that I realised that I'm part of the LGBTQ. A year and a bit later, I came out as genderqueer. The thing is I was in year 8 and he was in year 11. I met this guy in an after-school club.
Right.
And then me and his other friends would eat at lunch. And everyone in the group was gay. Everyone in the group were part of LGBTQ. So it was all accepting, and I knew that my mum would accept me. I knew that my brother would accept me. There's some people that, you know, in my family that maybe hold a bit of stigma onto it, so I just didn't tell them.
This period of sort of starting to know oneself, which seems to be an official phrase, what else is going on in your lives at this time?
Just complete inner turmoil, to be honest, if I remember it as I do. It's a lot of conflicting feelings, it's really tiring actually. You're kind of constantly arguing in your own brain, you're fighting yourself. You're trying to decide whether you're right or not, whether you're being influenced by some kind of outside factor, and it can be quite stressful, to be honest. I've found that it's basically mandatory in this day and age to do an Am I Gay quiz on the internet, which never helps because they're not going to teach you anything that you don't already know. And I think it's just a lot of very big emotions about trying to figure out if you are actually LGBTQ or not, but you still kind of have these feelings of I'm not normal or I'm not typical, and that can be quite difficult to deal with by yourself.
I often associate the idea of discovering yourself really as like the stages of grief. You've got the stages of denial, oh god, no, this isn't me, I don't think this is right, leading to that self-hatred that everyone's going to inevitably feel. And then bargaining, I don't want to be this, is there any way that I can try to like change it? Change how I look, change how I act to get yourself more into the quote-unquote normal mindset, trying to be regular. And then finally, as you get through, the acceptance of this is who you are, you're not going to be able to change it, you're not going to be able to have anything different. It's not something that you can change, it's something that you're going to have to live with one way or another.
You mentioned the internet. Is Google your friend at this time when you're going through and making these decisions?
The internet can be a good resource if you look in the right places. If you go down a rabbit hole or if you go on forum apps like Reddit, you're very likely to actually just confuse yourself further and maybe find a lot of misinformation.
I mean, there's pros and cons to it, I think. I think sharing personal experiences is trying to, people who are kind of in the same kind of age range as we are, get more acceptance than just state in black and white, which might not apply to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely destigmatises it. I think just more when a really good example is TikTok or Instagram, when people are trying to spread information but maybe they're a bit young and they're not really great with finding an accurate source, and then that can make it a bit worse, I think, in that respect.
Google it's so much misinformation, but also a lot of good information. When you're just like trying to find out about it, it's sometimes too much, or you can mislabel yourself, just like
There's a lot going on Google. I'm sure there's probably a wiki how on trying how to figure out your gender or whatever. It's nice for people to be able to have that information available to them, but I think definitely for myself when I was younger, it was just a lot at once, and it felt like you needed to be able to understand everything that you were going to see, and that you needed to identify with something as soon as you were looking. I feel like there's just like a lot of social media platforms, Discord, like forums, where it's just everyone's so ready to give you a label, so ready to involve you into the gay regime or whatever, and it's not the most helpful. Whilst you're going through it, you definitely think it's a really helpful tool for you. You're finding all of these friends, finding all of these people with the same adventures, kind of, I don't know, they all have the same experience as you, and you feel like you've got to fit in with them, you feel like you've got to associate yourself with them, and it's all really confusing for someone to go through all at once.
So having been through this phase, what advice would you give to someone who's just entering this area or is living with these sort of feelings and experiences at this moment? I
would say you're definitely not alone. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are discovering yourself, and that is a massive step for someone who is still as young as you are. You've got a lot of life ahead of you.
I would say don't panic. Because I think a lot of the time when you realise that you're queer or LGBTQ or whatever, you kind of feel this immediate pressure to announce it or tell someone or do something with it, but you can just sit with it and you can just think about it. You don't have to go make big decisions now, and you don't have to feel guilty because you're not in trouble for it. And if you can, speak to someone who will keep it a secret for you, but just don't worry. It's not a bad thing. It's not a big deal.
Not everything you see online is real. Similar to like celebrity gossip, every fact you see online, it's not always going to be a fact. It's not always going to be something that's real. Like, for example, Wikipedia. Anyone can write anything on Wikipedia. You can edit articles and anything. You just need to be confident in yourself. You've got to understand that you know how you feel, and maybe talk to someone around you. There's so many youth clubs around that you can get yourself involved with. But then there's also friends. There's openly gay people that you can talk to. I know that when I came out, I was part of the Weird Gay group, and I had so many younger people, year 7s and year 8s, coming to me and saying, hey, I'm gay, but I don't really know how to deal with it. And I always thought that that was going to be the way that people were going to figure out about it more. There's going to be people out there with so much more experience in it, so much more knowledge in it. And if you don't speak to people, then you're just going to find yourself trapped in something that you aren't always going to know about.
It may be a secret, but it's not a bad one.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognise the fact of it's not a timeline. It's not going to be a ticking bomb that's going to explode whenever. You're okay to keep it to yourself. You're okay to have this be your own secret and not have anyone else know. No one else needs to know. It's your thing, and not everyone follows the same timeline. You could spend years trying to figure yourself out, and someone else may take weeks. It's different for everyone.
Assuming that once you know yourself, what comes next?
Once you realise that you are gay, you kind of move on to like the next stage of it, where you feel like you have to tell people. You might want to tell family, friends, but you don't have to.
What was your experience of this? It sounds like coming out of school might be quite daunting, might be quite difficult.
It's not always the best time, to be honest. It depends on your family, it depends on your friends, and it depends on what kind of school you go to. I came out when I was 12. It was May 2020, I think. So everyone was in lockdown. So I didn't have to go to school. Slightly different for me. My family took it relatively well, which was nice. My friends took it relatively well. They had a couple awkward questions, but for the most part it was like fine. But I think when I got back to school, there was definitely some very arrogant boys who thought it was very funny to ask me pretty personal questions, I'd say. Because the problem with school is that it's not really like swimming in safe places. There's not a lot of places to go if you are LGBTQ at school, which can make it quite difficult to come out, quite intimidating.
With me, I came out to a group of people who really weren't my friends at school, because honestly I really felt forced into it. It wasn't the most fun. I really wanted to be the person that everyone liked and everyone like to talk to, and I felt like to do that I just had to be very open, like an open book, so that everyone would know like every bit of information about me, and I would just like they could accept me for that. Obviously some people aren't accepting, but really when you're in the early stages of it, you just want to tell people that you trust. I made that mistake where I just told like this mass group of people who I barely knew, and that actually caused rumours around my school, and it caused me to be labelled as the gay kid. I did also have a friend group of gay people, and they were like massively supportive, so I'd just say definitely do go to the people where you have support.
I came out twice because I'm also transgender, so I came out as gay at the very start of year 8. It was also quite a heavily affected part of my school year because of COVID. I think it was in November where the government decided we'd have a month off, and I think I did it just before then, so I kind of got off the hook there. And I think when I came out as transgender, I think that's what I was kind of hoping for as well. So I came out to my friends because I had quite a supportive, like tight-knit group of gay friends, really, and I came out to them about April. I came out to near enough the whole school. I posted it on my Snapchat story saying I was transgender, use that name, use pronouns wouldn't go about that one again. Basically, did that about final week and went into school the next day, and I didn't have that much hatred or homophobia against me. I think I had quite a few people who came up to me and said, hey, what would you like me to call you? I had like messages that night from like just random boys in my classes saying, hey, would you like me to call you Asha? What pronouns do you use? And I thought that was really sweet. And I came out to my first couple of teachers because obviously they aren't going to see everything that I post online. Overall, I had quite a positive experience of coming out, but I know quite a few people who haven't. The main part of coming out that scared me, though, was the fact of it went around the whole school in the matter of days. It was horrifying how quick rumours spread. Like, I had people across the other side of the year group coming up to me and saying, oh, you're trans. I've never met a trans person before. And it was the most terrifying experience for this little child walking around school trying to figure out what's going on.
What would your advice be to other young people that might be going through this and at this stage of their lives?
I'd recommend them to speak to an adult who they did trust, especially an adult, whether it be a teacher, whether it be a friend's parent, whether it be an older sibling, if you can find someone you do genuinely care about and that does care about you and your feelings and your well-being, and be an advocate for people who are also going through the same thing and try to spread something positive more than, stigma.
Speaking from personal experience, one of the best things you can do is join a youth group if you can. It's one of the easiest ways to make other gay friends who understand what you're going through. It's supervised by adults, so you know that you're not going to have to face challenges with people there, if they're saying things you don't like. And it's just a really nice little community to kind of tide you over through high school, especially if you don't have a very accepting high school.
Find a safe space as well. I had a friend group. There was a during lunch group for an LGBTQ safe space at my school. And then you can also join actual youth groups, which are supervised by adults.
I feel like you need to involve yourself in people who accept you, people who make you feel good about yourself. And if there is anyone who's trying to disvalue your appearance, trying to say, no, you're not allowed to be who you are, then make sure to report it. Most times schools are going to try to stop any sort of hate they can, but you just need to surround yourself in the acceptance of friends, families, teachers. Even if you don't have those things, I personally found that a creative writing club after school was an accepting place, trying to find those hobbies in school. Even if they don't have an LGBT youth club like Finn said, just talking to other people your own age, it makes you find out that you're not alone in it. You're not like the only person in the world who's going through it. There's so many people around you who are going through this too.
A recent survey by the National Centre for Social Research suggests that lesbian, gay and bisexual people are more than twice as likely as heterosexuals to have a long-term mental health condition. That's quite a scary statistic. Would that be your own experience?
I personally have had mental health issues caused by it, and even if they weren't originally caused by it, it's definitely made them worse. And all of my LGBTQ friends at some point have faced mental health struggles, and I think obviously this is anecdotal, but in comparison to my straight friends who have suffered from mental health issues, so many more of my gay friends have. And I think it's caused by a lot of things. I think it starts very young when you first have that kind of like knowing yourself stage. I think it's the secret keeping. I think it can be really anxiety inducing, and then as you get older you can feel shame around it or guilt, and then that can cause you to have low self-esteem or maybe depression.
I definitely had a lot of anxiety about talking to other people because I felt very isolated.
I think it definitely means something. I know that I've not met many gay people who haven't had backgrounds in depression or anxiety or anything like that. There's so many mental health issues that are caused by homophobia and bullying, and just really thinking that your own is not good enough, not having that self-belief, thinking that you're wrong to feel this way, or you're wrong to be gay or transgender or being part of any of the LGBT statements. And I think that leads to a lot of self-hatred and having a wider impact on like stereotypes, like if boys wear pink, they're gay, and therefore leading to much more of hiding emotions and trying to making men look more masculine to make it seem like they could never be like that. And I think it's so hurtful to so many stereotypes and hurtful to people trying to act like themselves. Like, I think we have so much more of a closed off community because people are too scared to be themselves.
Are there any other triggers for bad mental health?
Absolutely. I think social media these days can be incredibly toxic. Instagram, TikTok, it's just people create these communities that are just centered around hating other people and creating these divides between people and just these pointless like culture wars essentially. It can make you feel like you really don't belong, like you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, and I think that's really dangerous. TikTok is the absolute worst for it. Twitter and TikTok, sworn enemies of mine. So toxic. People fighting pointless arguments that don't need to be argued.
So I definitely agree with Iona. Twitter and TikTok are the worst own enemies, honestly. Especially TikTok with a lot of people that go on there and keep spreading the same message over and over again by using different words.
Shy away from the TikTok
Yeah.
because it will just convince you there are 100 issues in the LGBTQ community that have never existed and still don't exist. And stay away from Twitter because people just have too much time on there and you could be doing better things.
The rise of TikTok, there was such thing as gay TikTok, where really just false information, misinformation was spread all across people's view pages, making a great boundary between gay communities and straight communities, creating more hatred between them. And this made it all the way through to mainstream news. Like, for example, Piers Morgan, he had a lot of influence on people. Once anything was posted on TikTok, it was a matter of moments before so many people had viewed it.
Often you can start to isolate yourself, and when you isolate yourself, everything just becomes an echo chamber. So everything that you like say about yourself, every bit of like self-hatred is just constantly coming back to you. And then if you add homophobia into that, it just gets worse and worse. It spirals.
So what might be the negative implications of having poor mental health? How might that realise itself?
Poor self-esteem is the beginning of all of that. If you feel as though you are not worth anything, you won't take care of yourself, you won't care what happens to you, and you'll take steps to kind of almost punish yourself for things that you feel you've done wrong. I think one of the two most common ways that especially queer people tend to try and use it as a coping mechanism that are quite self-destructive is probably developing eating disorders and self-harming. I think they're massive issues right now. I know so many people who have struggled with it, and there's not enough help out there, and there's not enough targeted help out there for people who maybe started because they are queer, and that's the main issue that they need to get to the bottom of.
And it can sometimes lead to suicidal association, which is obviously really bad.
Are there examples of positive coping mechanisms that you can kind of apply to yourself?
Absolutely. One of my favourite healthy coping mechanisms is just going to the gym. When I'm anxious or I'm having a hard day, I'll just go to the gym and I'll just do a workout, and afterwards you're too tired to be stressing about something. I mean, also obviously when you do work out, your body releases endorphins because it's good for you, so you will immediately feel better. You don't have to go to the gym to get this effect. Obviously you can run, you can cycle, you can swim, you can put on some music and just jump up and down wildly until you feel better, but it's definitely a good one.
I definitely agree with going to the gym and doing exercise. When you get anxious and you focus that adrenaline onto something physical that can take it all out is absolutely fantastic. It may not work in the moment, but eventually if you keep on at it, I definitely think you get into that routine of doing it as well, and you train your body to keep up with exercise. I think that is possibly one of the best short-term outcomes.
Well, it's always good to exercise. It just gets rid of this like awful feeling that you get in your body, because whenever you're anxious, sad or angry, I always find that there's an immense feeling coursing through your body. So if you move anything, it can get rid of it.
I think I personally have found it more helpful for myself to just associate myself with positive, accepting people. For me personally, I think I've always found it easier to just speak to my friends, not even to speak to my friends about whatever's going on. Just saying, hey, can we have a little chat, or ringing them and asking them, hey, can we just like talk about something? It always manages to like clear up my day. And I think it's always nice and positive to have that sort of acceptance there and having people there who you're able to speak to in times of need.
And if you don't have someone to talk to, like someone else, you can try and talk to yourself and try and have a positive mindset with that. Talk to your wall, almost.
But yeah, just
and
maybe not in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Just imagine that you're talking to someone else and they're trying to like help you. So essentially you're helping yourself.
Finally, we've talked about the benefits of safe spaces, and I think one of you mentioned finding a youth club. You're all members of the Brunswick Centre.
Yes.
Do you want to explain a little bit more about what happens there?
So the Brunswick Centre is a youth group for people who are between the ages of 11 and 25 years of age. And essentially the groups, we just do our own thing, and we sit, and there's a pool table, there is a garden, there is a lot of activities that come out from our cupboard. We have services come and we create things. We also have trips sometimes. We have fun events that we do as a team, and we all work together, and we're a good little family.
Yeah, I can confirm as someone who's been on the residential trip we went on that all the people who work there, first of all, are so kind. They genuinely are just there to help you, and you can tell that they love what they do. It's just a really nice community, especially when I was younger and quite a frightened little gay child. It was really nice to have a place to go that was completely separate from the rest of my life. It was like this little bubble outside of my life that was close to where I lived, so it was easy to get there. And it was just nice to have friends who weren't judging me. And it was nice to almost feel cool, because when you're a queer kid in high school, you don't always feel that cool. But when you get to go to this separate group and have loads of friends, it can kind of make you feel a lot better about yourself, a lot more confident, really.
It's basically a youth club for any gay youth to just go and make other gay friends. And it's all a youth club under the supervision of adults, so you're not scared of having that trauma dumping that you get online. And it's actual face-to-face interaction, which I feel like is always helpful to just kind of put yourself in the moment to realise that you're actually real. And I think it's always been so nice for me to go there, because it's such a big place, and definitely as a scared gay child, going there and seeing so many other people who not only have gone through what I've gone through, but have also came out the other side and came out happier and like brighter. And you can see like people who have like jobs who are in the same situation as you, and it's making you feel like you know that everything's going to be possible and everything's going to be okay once you get through.
It really builds a community, and you can just find a good like social aspect to it.
And they also advertise themselves at Pride events, at college events. They try to make themselves as known as possible, trying to offer that help to everyone. And once you are already there, there's so many trips. It's not really just the feeling of being in like a gay youth club, but it's being in a safe space where you can do things that you enjoy, and they're ready for any setting whatsoever. And they reimburse you for bus tickets in case that you're not so easily able to get there. And I think they also help out with food banks, and they have toiletries and everything. They're very much for the people, and I think that's always something that I've quite enjoyed knowing that's there.
So what would you say to someone who'd like to attend there but maybe is a little bit nervous about doing so?
I would say group has given me so many friends, so much experience, so many opportunities, including trips, work experience, things to put on my CV. And I'd say you're never going to get an opportunity as good as this at your age. I'd tell them to take it straight away.
Try and find their website, Brunswick Centre, and you can also find it on social media such as like Instagram, Facebook, they're on both. And from there you can get all the information to like sign up or talk to one of the staff, and that can start the process to try and join.
I think it's also important to know that you're under no obligation to actually turn up. I think it's better for you to see if this is what's personally good for you, what you think will actually help you. It's not always what's about what's going to help someone else, what's going to help your friends. It's about you, what's going to help you, and whether you're going to find this helpful.
Well, that seems a good, positive place to end this LGBTQ takeover. I'm a little bit worried that we've only just scratched the surface of all the important issues that we could have discussed today.
Yeah, but we have made a start, and it's good that we've managed to start discussing this on a public platform.
If you would like more information about the issues we have discussed, you can find lots of links in the podcast description.
And I really recommend finding a youth group in your area, but if you are in Huddersfield, Halifax, Calderdale or Dewsbury, then the Brunswick Centre would be a great place for you.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast as much as we have to make it, and we hope you found our advice and experiences useful. Hopefully we'll get to do all this again soon.
Bye!
I think you have created something really important there. That was packed with advice and support.
I'm sure any young person who is struggling with the process will find some of that discussion comforting and inspiring.
We should definitely give the details out for the Brunswick Centre. They do some great work in the area, and if you have any LGBTQ+ issues, they should definitely be your first port of call, especially if you are based locally.
You can find out more at thebrunswickcentre.org.uk.
And that's it for another episode. Today we've looked at what it's like to be gay as a teen or young adult. And like Indigo said, even if you're not gay, how you interact with someone that is can have a massive impact on their life.
We'd like to thank C&K for hosting us, and particularly to Katie for liaising with the Brunswick Centre. We'd also like to thank Youth Social for pulling everything together, and for Graham who did the interview.
If you'd like to know what we are covering next week, keep an eye on our socials.
You can follow us on Instagram or TikTok. Search What the Friday Pod to get news of forthcoming episodes or discover other ways that you can get involved with this podcast.
And finally, if you are a company or organisation and would like to get involved in the podcast in either providing opportunities for young people you work with or telling people about your beneficial services, please get in touch.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.